Welcome in, Mountaineer Nation. I'm Sam the Man, and this is another episode of the Mountaineer Effect. If you haven't already, smash the subscribe button. We're almost to 600 subscribers. Once we get there, I'm going to start doing some giveaways. Got a special guest with me today, co-host of the show Puck and Schmuck, but he's not here to talk about hockey today. We're going to talk about football. CP.
What's up, everybody? What's up, Sam?
I want to talk a little bit about Oklahoma. I've been, we had Mark on the other day talking about UNC. I want to talk a little bit about Oklahoma. What's the fan experience like in Oklahoma?
So I was a military brat, and I moved around a lot. So I've been that's how I met you. You were my coach when I lived in West Virginia. And it's funny because I know you remember just as well as I do that I hated the idea of moving here. And so it's funny to look at me now and see the fact that Norman is kind of, I miss living in Norman. I only live about 10 minutes away from the campus, 10 to 15 minutes away from the campus or so. But yeah, I just think as far as states and just pride, I've never seen anything like Sooner pride. This is a Sooner state through and through. And there's just nothing quite like the Palace of the Prairie, man. It's honestly, I've been to a couple different places and stuff. I think it's really pretty. It is really, really pretty. And the environment on game day is just, it's different, I said that I went to the Iowa State game this past weekend, and that's one of the things because it was an early game, and I hate all OU fans. We all hate 11 a.m. kickoffs. We're tired of them. But I got up and I went to the Fox Big Noon kickoff. So I went to Big Noon kickoff and got to hear Bob talk a little bit, and then they had Caleb Kelly on, and it was cool, man. Everybody was packed around that little podium and the setup they had, and I'm not a morning person at all, and even I was like, damn, Norman is really beautiful. In the mornings, it felt nice out. Perfect temperature was upper 50s, lower 60s. Just a great environment, man.
What are the fans like on game day? I mean, and what I'm interested in is how are Oklahoma fans with opposing fans coming into the stadium? Are they friendly? Are they, get along, go along kind of fans, or are they hostile assholes, or what?
I mean, you're going to have those fans in every fandom. For the most part, it's my understanding that Oklahoma fans are typically pretty welcoming to the other fan base. I saw it firsthand in Nebraska. Nebraska fans are really nice, actually, which is funny because I hated when I lived there. I hated talking to Nebraska fans, but they tipped my buddy at his tailgate. They gave him a $100 tip, 2 or 3 different people. And most people just drop tens or maybe a 20, and they were like, "We're going to give you $200."
Oh, wow.
But yeah, our fan base is pretty nice for the most part. We're only an asshole to 2 opposing fan bases, and that's Oklahoma State and Texas. To my understanding, the people that I've talked to that have traveled from WVU to come to Norman, they say that Norman has the best fans, and that's just my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always heard that. I've always heard that too. I mean, I've always heard good things about traveling to Oklahoma and just the whole environment itself. What kind of fan favorite foods and stuff do they have? I'm just curious, if I'm going to come and tailgate or come and eat at the stadium, because, when Mark went to UNC, you can't go to UNC and not get some Carolina barbecue, because if you like vinegar covered meat, that's all for you. What do you guys like to have on game day?
Well, it depends on the time. Like I said, we've gotten pretty acquainted with 11 a.m. kickoff. So usually I go to my buddy Demo's tailgate. Shout out to Demo's Smoked Ribs, by the way. If you live in Norman or even in Moore, OKC, it's the best place you can get ribs. He tailgates, and we had breakfast tacos and some biscuits and gravy this weekend. So it really just depends on the time. I know whenever we played Nebraska, his goal was we were going to smoke corn husks is what he said they were going to do. But they weren't able to get a hold of them in time, I guess. But yeah, we eat a lot of, depending on the time, a lot of breakfast food, a lot of tacos. There's barbecue around. it really just depends on whose tailgate you go to. There's also really good food in the stadium. It's obviously overpriced, but I mean, yeah, I mean, me personally, the tailgating is what I look forward to. Every time I go to a home game, I go to my buddy Demo's tailgate and always say what's up to him. And he usually like this past weekend, it was like 10 o'clock and I was drinking beer mimosas.
I mean, that's like, that's like going to Mountaineer Stadium, like, you go partially. I know people that go only to tailgate. They don't even go to the game. They go to tailgate.
We have those here too.
Yep, and they go to drink and eat pepperoni rolls. So I mean, like every like, and that's kind of like why I'm doing some of these talks with you guys is because I like for people to have a better idea of like the difference between each stadium and like if somebody's traveling there, what to look for. Because if somebody's coming to Oklahoma and they hear what you're talking about, go check out his stand, man, because that must be some good stuff. If the locals are like that's where you go,
Oh yeah, man. We're still trying to get him to get. I don't know if he's had it already. I know he tweeted the other day that podcast of the weekend is rigged since like 2012 or something. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping he gets it someday soon, man. He puts on some really good tailgate.
So let's dive back. Let's dive from that right into football, and let's talk a little bit about Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams, and Lincoln Riley's decision to put Spencer back in just because Caleb was struggling a little bit. What's your take on that? You think it cost him the game? Do you think it was a bad decision?
I wasn't happy with it, man. I don't think many of us were. I think with Spencer, you've seen all you're going to get as far as him at the Oklahoma program. I think he could come to WVU if he wanted to. I think he could go just about anywhere and be. You're telling me you wouldn't take Spencer over Dagey?
No, I'm in love with Dagey at this point.
Why?
Why not?
I mean, I guess you're going to have him for another year.
That's the only answer I got, man. Like, Neil Brown ain't giving me no reason. He ain't giving me no reason. It's just I'm just going to have goo-goo eyes for Dagey for another year and just not have a reason why. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, I can get that. That's kind of how I was with Spencer. I just assumed because I've known like pretty much every OU fan. Like when Caleb committed, we were all super head over heels because he was the number one quarterback in the nation. So getting him was a big deal, and I've been waiting for him to take Spencer's job. Like I went to the spring game in March or April or whenever it was, and Morgan made the comment. She was like, "You seem to be watching more of Caleb's snaps than Spencer's." And she's like, "What do you know?" And I was like, he's going to start for us soon. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I think Lincoln really, first and foremost, my problem with Lincoln is he needs to hire an offensive coordinator. I am so tired of him calling the plays and dropping his balls and just leaving them in the purse, so to speak.
And that's the thing. Like a lot of people don't realize, like, your head coach, when he's calling the offensive plays, you're automatically going to suffer when it comes to clock management. You're automatically going to suffer when it comes to personnel management. Like it's automatic. You're gonna have that problem, and that's something Neil Brown struggled with too. Like, bring in an offensive coordinator that can do what you would want them to, what you would do. You know what I'm saying? Because like you can get on that same brain length where they say, well, this is what he would want us to do in this situation. But I mean, I agree with you. Like that's something he really needs to do.
His coaching is ultimately what led to us losing to Baylor, because I was buying a TV, so I was only here and there watching part of the Baylor game, but it was my understanding from what I saw that Caleb wasn't playing too hot and Baylor was just all over him. And so he pulled him, put Spencer in. We were down by 3 and we lost by 14. So you do the math there. I think Spencer played the full third quarter. Again, I missed a good portion of that game. I only saw the first half, and then luckily enough, I saw them put Spencer in, and then that's when I went to go. And I was like, all right, I need to go buy a TV. I've seen what I need to see. But yeah, I mean, it's not even that Spencer's bad. He would be QB1 at 95% of these other schools. It's just that I think we've seen the ceiling for him with us. Maybe not his ceiling per se, but I think the ceiling I don't want to say Oklahoma is too big for him, but I think that it kind of comes down to the true freshman had a little more upswing than what he had.
Well, and I think part of the problem is like the Oklahoma mentality and Spencer's mentality don't gel. And I think that's a big part of it. Like you can watch Caleb on the sidelines and tell, man, he's Sooner through and through. Like you can tell, like he's Oklahoma through and through. Like just the way he approaches the game and the players and the coaches and the rest of his team. Spencer's just, I don't know. He would do better at like a bigger, like at a like Alabama or somewhere like that. Where and the reason I say that is because those guys are there
because of the program.
Because of the program, and it's just very different. Like they're not there to be Mr. Personality, and places like Oklahoma, it's good to have a personable quarterback. You look at Kyler and Baker and all those guys; they had great personalities. Spencer just doesn't have that, so he needs to go to more of a program where it's mechanized. You know what I'm saying? Like where it's more robotic, and he don't have to do that. I just don't think he has it in him.
I'm just not sure if ultimately, I know we discussed it before. I think NIL has to be the only thing that changed because when he was in high school, he was Boomer Sooner all day, and I still think he loves OU, and I think he cares about OU, but I think he sees the forest through the trees. I think he knows that he's not gonna outplay Caleb.
So, do you think he portals out after this year?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think he has the grace to handle it how Jalen did with Tua and Bama. I just don't see that.
So where do you think he goes?
I mean, that's a whole discussion in of itself. I could see him going home to Arizona and either playing at Arizona or Arizona State. I could see him transferring in conference. I know I sent you some Texas Reddit boards. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he did try to transfer to Texas, but I think even he knows Texas is a sailing ship and he doesn't. I don't know, man. With him, I've heard, again, a grain of salt, and I heard it at a card shop, so I'm not taking it too seriously. Some people are saying he might go to Oregon.
Well, I mean, and something that I've heard a couple of people say, and Mark has hit on it a couple times, that he thinks Spencer and Lane Kiffin is a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of got on that. I kind of got on that bandwagon a little bit because I've heard that a couple different places, and Mark has said it, and it didn't really hit me. But once you start hearing it other places, you're like, it does kind of make sense.
Those are two peas in a pod, man. They're both just jackasses. They're perfect for each other.
He'd go play for Dabo. We're not Dabo fans either, guys. So
no, Dabo's the worst.
So, and something else I wanted to ask because I'm curious: what are the chances that Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma for LSU?
0.000000000 chance.
You don't think money?
No.
Money. And the reason that I look at it the way I do, a little more objectively, is Oklahoma will have a few growing pains moving into the SEC. It's just natural. And if he has a few down years, there's a lot of expectation there, and it just makes me wonder if he went to LSU making that much more money without the expectations. Could that be something that he looks at and says, let's just go ahead and jump ship. That way I don't have to go through all the growing pains. That's just my own thinking on that.
I mean, I could kind of understand that. I don't think Lincoln's entertaining it. I think his agent is doing his job and talking around. And I think what you're hearing is more so about his agent talking to people. But, I mean, this is Lincoln Riley, the same dude that said, I'm not going to go coach the Dallas Cowboys. And that is far more money than what LSU could ever throw at him. I think he looks at it as he knows we can't. If he left OU, we wouldn't be able to replace him. And that's what's frustrating is he could be so much better than what he is. And I know it, every OU fan, like we want Lincoln to go back to how he was, because when he was the OC and Bob was the head coach, Lincoln is a genius offensively. The stuff that he draws up is insane. But like I said, he needs someone to call the plays, because sometimes he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. It might make us look bad. But I don't see it, man. I can see how, from an outsider's perspective, you're like, oh, that's a lot of money. But I think he's okay with being at OU. I think he knows that we can't replace him, because that's the golden thing, is all of us are frustrated with him, but no one can tell us who should take his place, because we're not going to get Saban. We're not going to get Ryan Day. And I think he's better than most of these coaches. I just don't know I don't know if it's in his mind or what's going on. Something's off with him. And it's almost like, because you and I have talked about this several times. He just doesn't, he takes his foot off the gas. When he's up, if he's up 14 points, it doesn't matter. He's going to start putting the backups in. He's going to just call heavy run plays. It's frustrating, I think that's why he'll stay, is he knows that Oklahoma will match whatever the offer is or come close to it. And he knows that they're not going to replace him.
Well, that's kind of like I know the way we feel about Neil Brown. Like, there's a killer instinct that Neil Brown doesn't have. And I don't think Lincoln Riley has it either, where, when you're up 14 points, you don't go all conservative willy-nilly. You keep one foot on the throat, one foot on the gas, and you just go.
Like he did against Florida. That's my thing, is if he coached how he did with Florida.
It's so frustrating.
That's my thing, man. I wish he would just coach how he did in the Orange Bowl or the Cotton Bowl. If he would coach how if he would coach how he did against Florida in the Cotton Bowl, then I wouldn't have a problem if we lost. Because at that point, I'd be like, you know what? He kept Caleb in, and he kept going for it, and he had the balls to do it. That's kind of what makes Lane Kiffin so successful. And that's also what makes him lose, is Lane Kiffin will put his balls out there and will literally throw that ball 80 yards if he needs to.
Well, and that's the thing. Like Nick Saban is never really puts his team in a position where they have to, be risky. And I mean, that's a big part of it. Like, we'd all love to be to that point, because that's that next level. But, that's the thing with Neil Brown. Like, a lot of the West Virginia fans, I mean, they still chatter about Neil Brown and they want Neil Brown gone. Like, there's a lot of them.
I've seen it in your comment section.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just me, because I follow some West Virginia pages on Facebook and stuff. Like, there's a lot of people that just don't like Neil Brown, and I can't understand for the life of me why. Like, he hasn't proven whether he can do the job or not yet. Like, that's still up in the air, and it's going to take another year or two before we really know. But I mean, he has shown growth as a coach. This, past week at Texas, like at the end of the game, going for it on, fourth down, throwing a pass into the end zone, you either put a dagger in the heart or you turn the ball over and then let your stingy defense do its job. Like, I think he's slowly figuring this out. But when you have control freaks like Lincoln Riley and like Neil Brown, like those learning lumps, whatever you want to call them, come at a little bit of a higher price, because they have to learn that it's okay to keep your foot on the gas.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think part of it too is that maybe there's a respect factor to it. Like maybe that there's a running joke with OU fans this year, and it's Lincoln Riley's post-game interviews. Every fucking post-game interview, all he ever says is, yeah, it's a hard-fought win, or, they're a tough opponent and all that. And I'm like, dude, Tulane is not a tough opponent. You let them be a tough opponent with your coaching, because I admittedly thought Tulane was way better than what they were. I thought they were this year's Army for us. And that's just not the case. And a lot of these teams that normally I would give a pass for us only beating by like 7 to 10, I can't justify it anymore.
Yeah. And Neil Brown, I feel the same way. Like, I hate watching his press conferences, because it's always the same shit. Well,
trust the climb.
they outplayed us today. They played very good. They didn't do anything to hurt that. They didn't do anything to lose the game. No turnovers and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, man, we just got to trust the climb and work harder and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's the same recycled shit week after week. And really, for me, I blame these reporters for lobbing softballs at these guys instead of asking them the damn questions like, Lincoln, why the hell don't you have an offensive coordinator? Neil, why don't you have an offensive coordinator? Why did you do this or why did you do that? Like being very specific. It's like, I don't know. It's like these sports reporters they lob softballs in there nowadays and don't ask the questions that the fans actually want to know.
And then even when they do, they dismiss it or they act like they don't hear it. Like I remember when they put Caleb in the Red River game, Lincoln doesn't let freshmen be interviewed. But I mean, the whole world, we didn't care what Lincoln Riley had to say. All of us, even non-OU fans, all we wanted to hear was Caleb talk about how he felt to go into the Red River rivalry game and pull us back from that deficit. And I think you're right, man. I think the media, they're like, hey, I'll ask him an easy question because I know I'll get an answer and I get my money out of it. I think that's the case, like, why isn't someone asking, why didn't anybody really question Lincoln and say, why did you pull Caleb out and put Spencer in that long? Like same thing with, we've had this conversation multiple times. OU and WVU have a lot in common when it comes to the coaching and the quarterback. Only difference is Oklahoma has a higher pedigree than what WVU has.
Yep. I mean, and that's the thing, and that's what I want West Virginia fans to realize, Neil Brown could be the guy. You would agree with me on that as an OU fan, right?
Yeah.
Neil Brown could be the guy. And we would feel really bad firing a coach after 3 years and him going on to Auburn or what was the other job last year? South Carolina.
Didn't you say you heard rumbling about him going to Kentucky as well?
Well, that's the danger of losing him actually, because he did play at Kentucky, but last year he was talked about for the Auburn job. He was talked about for the South Carolina job. And the thing is I would hate to think that we run this man out of town and he goes somewhere like that and wins a national championship 5 years down the road. Like, you want to talk about setting your program back, but then also a kick in the nuts to go along with it. And that's the legitimacy of college football is you got to give your coach time to show you what he's got. Like Dana Holgorsen, and I know you guys get tired of me talking about Dana, but Dana Holgorsen really left nothing for Neil Brown in the cupboard. There was nothing for him. And this team that he's put together, is a mismatch of JC portal players that he's just kind of puzzled together a team that is only 2 touchdowns from being a 2-loss team. And that's what you got to remember. Sorry, I get a little I wish fans would realize that we are so close to being a 2-loss team.
I mean, you just got to have patience, and that's the thing is I know it's very hypocritical of you and I to sit here and talk about patience after talking about not having patience with our coach for 20 minutes nearly. But I mean, I think it's a little different with Lincoln than it is with Neil. The thing is ultimately, I'm sure you look at Lincoln Riley and you go, hey, he's winning the conference championship every year. He's the clear OU is the clear powerhouse of this conference. So it's I don't want to sound greedy or seem arrogant because there's a standard that I expect and many other fans expect, but it's there for a reason. But then you can look at it we haven't won a national championship in 2 decades. Where is this standard? And we're in the same boat. We're always a touchdown or 2 away from getting what we want, and that's what sucks about the college football playoff rankings right now.
Well, and I think as time goes, teams like Oklahoma that are getting to that pinnacle will find that pinnacle, and teams like West Virginia that's hovering at that mid-tier will take a step forward. I do think that will happen because the mighty do fall. It does happen. I mean, we've seen it.
Look at Clemson.
I'm 39. I've seen it happen, every 8 to 10 years. that mighty team. I remember when it was USC and teams like that was, and then they fall off and then they don't do anything for 20 years. And for Alabama and Georgia and some of these other teams, that's coming. It's going to happen. To think they can keep this up forever is folly, because it's not going to happen.
No, I totally agree with you. And the thing with Georgia is I don't even look at Georgia in the same boat, because you always hear, oh, the SEC wins the national championship the most. And it's like, no, it's Alabama consistently, and then Florida when they had Tebow, and LSU when they had their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, because the Coach O wasn't why they won that national championship. And Joe Burrow is a good quarterback, but I think you could have taken any quarterback, really, any like top 10 team quarterback, and put them in at LSU, and they would have done the same thing. That's why, they
were super stacked. I mean, there was a super stacked team.
When your third best receiver is Randy Moss's son, I mean, how bad had to have been on that LSU team, And that's the thing is, I know a lot of SEC fan bases that sit here and they're like, SEC, and I'm like, what are you doing? You're not even bowl eligible. What are you doing clinching onto Alabama's success? Because Georgia did that for a while. I mean, Georgia has really only had 2 years in the last 10 to 12 of like being legit.
Right.
That's why I don't like them always being lumped in with Alabama.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, if you look at the SEC this year, I mean, they've got their share of dumpster fires too. Like, they act like the SEC don't have, Vanderbilt in it, and Florida's having a down year, South Carolina's having a down year. Like they have dumpster fires too. Like this whole idea that the SEC is so much better than everybody. I mean, from top to bottom, my money honestly is in the Big 12, and people probably argue me up and down for that. But when it comes bowl time and the Big 12 doesn't lose a bowl game against anybody, like that goes to show you that top to bottom, the SEC isn't the be all end all. The problem is that their top teams are so much higher than everybody else's top teams that we're going to have to wait for them to fall before somebody else takes over that, king of the hill position.
Yeah, that's what's frustrating, man, is like,
but you're going to this. That's the thing, though. You're going to the SEC. And the thing is, Oklahoma is really primed to be one of those next king of the hills. You got the coach, you got, the players and the talent coming in to the Big 12. Once you put the SEC stamp on that shit, dude, I mean, I think Oklahoma is going to be nuts in the next 10 years. I really do. I really do believe that.
That's what I tell people, man. I hear it all the time from people saying, y'all are going to get your ass whooped in the SEC and y'all aren't going to be able to hang. And I'm like, really? Do you really think that? Because once we join the SEC, then we get to recruit in the SEC. And we're already this good without SEC recruits. So imagine how good we're going to be when we have that little SEC patch on our jersey compared to the Big 12 one.
Well, not only that, it's funny because Oklahoma, the way I look at Oklahoma and the way they recruit is kind of the same way I look at West Virginia, like the Mountaineer Effect. It's about doing a lot with a little. And, Oklahoma, Bob Stoops, Lincoln Riley, they do a lot with a little, but they still get the results from from their recruiting sections. Like, they're not getting the SEC players, but they're getting everybody else. And then, like you said, you throw, you take your backfield talent and put some of the SEC meat on the front line with that backfield talent, and it's going to be nuts.
See, that's our problem right now is I don't know what the hell happened, but the drop-off in the O-line I know we lost Creed Humphrey. He went to the Chiefs, and now he's protecting Patrick Mahomes' ass. Say that 10 times fast.
Protecting Mahomes' ass.
I know, we lost Creed, and he's like the number 1 rated rookie right now. So losing him sucked. But the thing is our offensive line, like, I don't know what the hell Bill's doing. I don't know how how we declined that much, because if you give Caleb even 2 more seconds of protection, we wouldn't have lost to Baylor.
I mean, that's true. You know, and it seems to me, well, let's talk a little bit about, we'll talk like a little bit about the rankings, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the NFL.
Okay.
You know, and that's the thing with the rankings. Like I said it from the beginning, from the beginning of the year, I felt like Oklahoma was going to have a national championship run. That's still not busted. That still could happen. But I swear it feels to me like you guys are getting punished for having a slow start. You agree?
100%, man. I have never seen so many one-loss teams up until we lost to Baylor get the benefit of the doubt for their tough loss over our close win. I don't care who you are. A tough loss is really inexcusable compared to a win. And when you're looking at the spectrum of competition, I think Cincinnati is – I can't really criticize Cincinnati. They're still undefeated, but there's definitely a competition gap. Their hardest game was Notre Dame, and they only won by, 3?
Yeah,
so
something to that effect.
That's the thing is the Big 12, we all play each other. And a lot of these other conferences don't do that. They have divisions set up. And so I don't understand why a tough loss is more important than a big win or a close win, you know. And that's kind of the joke. All of us, like when I said we needed to lose a game, I wasn't serious. I didn't mean we needed to really go lose to Baylor.
And the Cincinnati won by 11. Sorry.
Oh, they won by 11?
Yeah.
I must have looked at a different note. I must have looked at a different Notre Dame game.
But still, though, Notre Dame has struggled. You know, they struggled against Virginia Tech. They struggled
whoop their ass.
UNC. They struggled against they really struggled a little bit against Toledo and Purdue. Like that's the thing. Like Notre Dame gets all this freaking love for nothing year in, year out. They put them into the Final Four a couple of years ago and they got freaking slacked. I mean, they got completely exposed. And I feel like this team was it last? Yeah, last year. I mean,
yeah, Mac had 400 yards against them.
I mean, it just, I don't know. Like the whole system is right now is bullshit. Like I know, I tell my viewers all the time, you know, all they're doing is building stories. That's all they're doing is trying to build stories. And if you look, they built, you know, stories. Michigan State was put up in there, and then they got beat by Purdue, and then Oregon got put up in there, and they lost to Utah State. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, all they're doing is building stories. But at some point, the teams that you're building stories with, if they don't lose, you're stuck with them.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you look truthfully, if you look at, let's just say for shits and giggles, we're going to say this year we have a 12-team playoff expansion, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of 4, we have 12. Oklahoma would beat Notre Dame. We would beat Cincinnati. We would beat Michigan. I think Michigan would be a close one, but we would beat Michigan. I think we could beat Ohio State. Really, the only team that I think is head and shoulders above everyone is Georgia. And it pains me to say that because I've been bitter at Georgia since the Rose Bowl. But I truthfully think, from a non-biased standpoint, that Oklahoma could at least contend with most of these teams, if not beat them. What do you think? From an outsider's perspective, who do you think? Do you agree that Georgia is really the only one that Oklahoma wouldn't stand a chance against? And even then, they could probably keep it to 10 points at least.
The thing is like, and here's something that a lot of people overlook. Like, there's been an emphasis put on defensive play, especially in the Big 12, over the last few years that we didn't have 5 years ago. Like this air raid, touchdown for touchdown, 80, 73 scores, like basketball scores, essentially. Like, that's something that all these schools have put to the side, and they've gone more of the defensive route. So the defenses that you're seeing at the Big 12 are right now better than they've been probably ever, honestly. And I think that explosive offense that Oklahoma has, if coached correctly, could still hang 70, 80 points on somebody. I really do believe that. I just think that the emphasis have changed so much that they've gotten away from that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to match touchdown for touchdown. We're going to play a game of field position and blah, 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 blah. I think Oklahoma definitely beats Cincinnati. Oklahoma definitely beats Michigan. Ohio State, I think that would be a really – I think that's a really good matchup. See, I think that's a really good matchup because both teams are kind of Jekyll and Hyde. Like, it depends on what team shows up is going to determine who wins that game. Could Oklahoma beat Alabama? I think they could. I think it's a game. Give me that game. That's what I'm saying. Give me that game. Let's watch that game.
Keep Georgia at 1. Put Bama at 2, put us at 3, and put Cincy at 4. If you're going to go by your own logic of tough losses or close losses, tough matchups, they have to mean something. And so I don't think that Cincinnati scraping by these average-ass teams and Oklahoma losing to a really good, now top 10 Baylor, I don't think we should be penalized as much for that. Because you look at the rankings, like Ole Miss is the clear red flag on the top 10 right now.
Oh, by and large.
That's my thing.
I don't even know how that happened.
We went from a point to where when the Big 12, like you being a WVU fan, like OU and WVU was usually pretty high scoring game typically, but we've gone from a point to where when other teams do it, that's just good football. But when the Big 12 does it, it's no defense. And so now the Big 12 said, fuck that. We're going to start playing more defense. And now it's just, that's not what we look for. You guys are just doing it against Big 12 teams. You wouldn't do it against other teams. It's just the Big 12 is considered a little brother, and that's why I'm glad we're leaving.
Well, and the thing is, like, for the rest of the year, Georgia will play Alabama for the conference championship. Alabama's going to be a 2-loss team because I don't think they got anything for Georgia. I think Georgia smokes them. So, see, when we get to that point, that's where the problems really start. How do you put a 2-loss Alabama school who, okay, Georgia, I can give you that one, but they lost to freaking A&M. Like,
when they were unranked.
When they were unranked. So how do you say Alabama deserves to be in and Cincinnati don't? And I'm the biggest proponent of Cincinnati not getting in than anybody. But how do you justify that, like a 2-loss team? How do you justify Oklahoma not getting in but Alabama getting in? How do you justify Ohio State not getting in but Alabama getting in? Like, they're going to back themselves into a corner where they're going to either have to take a team that's in the top 4 at the end of the season and just yank them out, or they need to start tapering it that way now. And I hope over the next couple of weeks that's what we see. Because personally, I mean, if Alabama would beat Georgia, I mean, that's not going to happen. Then of course they deserve to be in, but that's not going to happen. So, I mean, really your 4 teams in my eyes would be Georgia, Oklahoma.
Where do you put say Ohio State loses to Michigan, or say they win? Who do you, if you look, because that's the boat we're bound to be in, is Oklahoma's probably going to beat Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State is legit. Like, this year they're serious, but the fact is we have literally 5 times as many wins as them for a reason.
Right.
So my thing is, when you start looking at that, where does a Michigan loss or a Michigan win rank? Because then they would jump them up over Oklahoma if Michigan lost to Ohio, or if they beat Ohio State. So it's like you're going to start having a lot of ultimately every team but Georgia is going to have 1 loss in that Final Four. It's inevitable.
And that's the thing is, are those 1-loss teams better than the 2-loss team? Like, it's going to be a mess. Like, I'm all for them building. Well, I mean, and we're forgetting Notre Dame. Right now, I mean, I don't think they deserve to be in the top 4, but they're a 1-loss team. I mean,
they're a 1-loss team because they're not in a conference.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, they're putting themselves in a corner where, like, it's going to be utter fucking chaos, and I think that's kind of what they want. I think they're wanting to expand the bowl series the playoff so much that I think they're willing to jeopardize what's going on this year to make a point to say, hey, if we had an 18 playoff, this wouldn't be a problem.
But do you know
if you look at it this year, if we had an 18 playoff with the top 8 teams this year, nobody'd have a problem with that.
That's what I was going to say is, do you ultimately know anybody that's going to complain about a playoff expansion?
West Virginia.
Well, my thing is this. We're at a point now in football where conference championships, and each year that goes by, conference championships don't mean shit anymore. Truthfully, they haven't meant shit since Alabama got into the Final Four when they didn't even make the conference championship.
I mean, it's all about money. At the end of the day, it's all about money, and it's all about building stories and pushing viewership to watch. Nobody's going to watch Oregon and Utah play unless they're ranked in the top 4, and if there's something on the line, then everybody watches that game. I mean, and that's just what they do. It's all about pushing viewership to this game or pushing viewership to this game or to this conference or to this conference. And that's really what they do. And what's so funny is the one conference that suffers the most is the SEC, because who gives a shit about watching Georgia? They're gonna win, so I ain't gonna watch them. Same thing with Alabama. Like, Alabama's gonna win. I'm not even gonna watch the game. Well, that was what happened to me with A&M. Like, I had $250 on that game for Alabama to beat A&M, so I didn't even watch the game. I mean, it was a given, and they lost. I mean, but that's the thing. Like, the good teams are the ones that suffer through the viewership through their shenanigans.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like the committee they need to quit riding the fence, and they need to pick a side to be on, because Alabama went up in the rankings for beating a now 7-4 Arkansas team, which is a great team, by the way. Arkansas this year is a legitimately good team. I'm happy to see them make a bowl. But that's the thing is, like, Arkansas almost beat them by 7. So it's either you give teams like Arkansas and the smaller teams, like whether it's looking at, we can use West Virginia. Like, let's say West Virginia had a little bit 2 more wins than what they do right now. Like, that's the difference in taking these smaller schools that aren't typically in the big picture and giving them the chance. Like, that's what my dad has always said. He said, fuck it, let's just do a round robin tournament where you have all the conference championships. All the teams that win the conference championship play each other. And then that's how you do it. That would be chaotic because there's so many conferences and stuff. But I kind of like that idea. I think conference championships should still mean something, and unfortunately, they don't right now. And I don't think they will until we leave for the SEC.
Well, and I really do believe until college football gets aligned more with the way the NFL is structured, this is what we're going to have. Because, it would be nice to have wild card teams in college football and, let them work their way to the Super Bowl, college Super Bowl, so to speak, and just let it go the same path, the same route. There may be 170 teams and
something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. But, half of them don't belong. And then the other half, let them fight it out. Let them just fight it out. And if you make the playoffs, great. If you don't, you don't. And just let it be what it is. You can still have bowl games. You can still reward those 6-6 teams that don't make the playoffs with a bowl game. You can still have your bowl series, but you just aren't going to make it to the playoff series. And that makes the most sense to me.
That's the thing, though, man, is the committee, like we were saying, has done this to themselves. We used to live in a time frame where during the BCS era, winning the Natty wasn't the only thing people cared about. People used to care about playing in the New York Six bowl games. Now, if you're not in the Final Four, who cares? And even if you are in the Final Four, if you don't win the Natty, no one looks at you and goes, damn, you won the Rose Bowl or you won the Orange Bowl. They just go, you lost in the national championship. And it kind of diminishes the value of what it's so hypocritical, because schools will sit here and brag about, we're Orange Bowl champions and we're Rose Bowl champions and we're Cotton Bowl champions. And then those same schools and stuff will diminish that if it means that they win the national championship.
Well, and essentially, in my eyes, the end of the FBS era, or the BCS era, was the death of tradition in college football. Like,
I agree.
Where the Rose Bowl was, and the Cotton Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl, like those, those were the teams. And now don't mean shit. It don't mean shit to the players. Half of them don't even play. They just sit it out because they don't want to hurt their draft stock, and don't blame them. But I mean, if it meant something to them, it would be different. And we're just never going to get back to that, and that sucks because that was such a fun era of football. Well, on that note, guys, we're going to sign off. This is Sam the Man with CP here with the Mountaineer Effect, talking a little football with you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching our podcast. Leave comments down below. Tell us what you agree with, what you don't agree with. Leave us questions. We're going to start doing these pretty often. I'm trying to find a way to expand the Mountaineer Effect just beyond Mountaineer football, even though that's going to be my focus. I'm going to bring guys on that I talk football with all the time, and we're going to start, instead of having these damn conversations on the phone, we're going to start putting them on video and putting them on the channel for you guys to watch. So leave us comments. We appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, everybody have a good night. Let's go Mountaineers.
Thanks for having me on.
Boomer sooner. Sooner
Texas
boomer.
sucks.
Texas sucks. Eat shit, Pitt.